Hello. Today, Group 1 Decepticon will presenting article review of how online learning affects student mental health. This member of the group is Jonathan as a leader, Serena, Andy, Yusti, and Adli. The reason of why we pick this topic is because the current issue involved in online learning and how it impacts psychologically to students. As we know, on 2020, COVID-19 declared as a pandemic. All sectors, including education sector, are prohibited under movement control order to combat the spread of the COVID-19. This limitation forced education sector to implementing online learning as alternative methods of learning. Although to some it might seem as advantage due to nature of to be convenient because of the flexibility, but on most part, especially in Southeast Asia, where internet coverage is still inaccessible, a stressful environment which the place maybe not suitable for study. And the third is denies the work method of learning, which is consists of visual, auditory, kinesthetic, reading, and writing. The rationale of this video is about online learning will increase the students' stress and anxiety, self-injury, and depression. All this problem leads to the online learning, how it affects student mental health. Thank you. The next presenter will be Andy.
Okay, thank you, Fabian. Okay, salam sejahtera and good morning, Miss and my friend. I am Pang Soo Kim, and I'm going to present the part of thesis statement and argument 1. Slide next, please. Okay, next. Okay, the thesis statement for our academic paper is, this paper agrees that online learning affects student mental health because online learning increases student stress and anxiety, and students have less exposure to effective teaching practice and lower quality interaction. However, some may claim that online learning is convenient, but due to the lack of internet facility and coverage in rural areas in Malaysia, some may find online learning is troublesome. Okay, next. The argument 1 in our academic paper is online learning increase student stress and anxiety. Okay, next. Okay, the point number 1, the nervousness of students about staying up the date with their schoolwork. For example, when students are not learning in school with their teacher, they're easier to feel nervous because they worry that he or she will left behind or cannot catch up their schoolwork during online learning. Point number 2, youngsters might encounter trouble thinking or keeping on track while at home. For instance, most of the students are harder to concentrate for their study when they have online learning at home. This may be due the distraction from their younger brother or sister. Point number 3, minority of teenagers also feel anxiety due to the need of communication with others in video. For example, there are some teenagers that might have problems like feeling shy, not very self-confidence in front of camera. This may make them harder to communicate with others during virtual class, which cause them feel anxiety. The last point is students also think that it's hard for them to get additional schooling support. Students might need additional support due to disability or health, learning environment, family circumstances, social and emotional factor. Okay, that's all from me. Next will be presented by Serena. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, hi, I'm Karina Steve. I will continue with what Andy has presented in argument 1. Due to this pandemic of COVID-19, all the education institutions are temporarily closed around the world. Emergency remote teaching and learning protect the safety and well-being of students, but most university students are facing difficulties to concentrate on their study and maintain their mental health because all education was through online learning. Long-term isolation because of online learning strongly affect one's mental health. This is based on New Straits Times 2020, paragraph 1. Next. Based on my point of view, long-term isolation really affect our mind, body, and mood negatively. For example, if we are away from loved one in the midst of pandemic, this creates a strong sense of panic for one, especially if they are in isolation. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. There are no distractions to drive our mind away from thinking about this COVID-19, which is obviously make we feel tense, which lead to panic, especially when we receive latest update from time to time. And nowadays, COVID-19 cases also growing rapidly and have worsened the worries of ones during isolation. Next. Hopelessness comes when one struggles in life, especially from the aspect of economic. When we are being isolated, we are unable to work, which means that some of our salary may be reduced or even eliminated. As a working adult, commitment linger around, especially when we have family. Being not able to do anything to have income, hopelessness is the only things left, and this may be leads to uselessness. Next. Loneliness is an obvious thing during isolation because we have no one to talk to, eat with, or even smile at. And this is very torturous situation for some people. Being lonely leads someone to overthink, and overthinking has a bad effect on our mental health. At the same time, anxiety and depression would come too in such situation. If we are unable to express feeling when we don't want to make our loved one worried about us, this make me keep everything to ourselves and cause stress in our mental. That's all from me.
So our argument point number 2, online learning leads to students having less exposure to effective teaching practices. The content of the information you create will not resemble what students might be familiar with because of net bandwidth constraint. So if your content relies on a lot of media or particular formatting, the net might not be the best delivery medium. Bandwidth or browser limitation may restrict instructional methodologies because you are constrained by the technology. If your content relies on a lot of audios, or intense graphics, and your students are on a poor internet coverage, net delivery will only frustrate them. Second point is online learning found students with varying level of achievement have varying level of conduct and behavioral patterns. Again, the limited bandwidth means lower performance of sound, video, and large graphics. Know the bandwidth available to your student before you commit to the net. On average, most mobile end users are running on a 28.8 kbps connection. The internet provides a wonderful means to get all kinds of information back and forth to your audience, but it also makes it harder to assess some type of student feedback and information. Online learning found students with varying level of achievement have varying level of conduct and behavioral patterns. For example, excellent students typically exhibit more stable behavior and behavioral patterns than those who receive a lesser grade in the course, which need to provide more teaching intervention in direction so that they can sustain consistent behavior. This statement suggests that discipline and mindset of the student itself affect greatly on the effectiveness of online learning. The researchers suggested a different approach for the lower achievement student to be treated differently according to their problem. Otherwise, it could lead to severe stress condition, and the student might make the decision to give up on study. So, second presenter will be Yusti.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. My part is argument number 3. Is the impact of education and mental health of student and academic staff. One of the most several impact industry is education. Okay, next slide. Alright. The education industry is one of the most impact industry. Most countries around the world, including Malaysia, implement obligatory learning, which means that physical classroom, where teaching were present, real classroom were held. Teacher and student were forced to rely on online learning systems such as Zoom, Google Meet, Skype. The tools it takes on the mental health of children and teachers alike was one of challenges. The lack of proper and enough infrastructure is one of the most important highlights in both papers. Some students and teachers struggle with online learning because of internet connection in remote regions, a lack of gadget of offering an efficient online learning environment, and a general lack of prepare on both sides. Mental health is also influenced by online learning. Students and faculty members experience strain, unwelcome stress as a result of this. Some students said that they are being given extra assignments and responsibilities to compensate for the lack of physical lecture and assessment as a result of change from physical to online learning. Students in the final year are finding it difficult to cope with the burden of online learning. Some are considering skipping a few topics per graduate. They also afraid that the state of our economy will have an impact on their job prospects once they. As a workaround to the global epidemic, university and others educational institutions should identify ways to improve learning delivery and quality. The necessary for physical learning performing on learning has numerous, and that we are not as well prepared as we would like to be to deal with the abstract transition from physical to online learning. Okay, that's all from me. The next presenter is Mr. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah, and thank you, Madam Yusti. So the counter argument for this topic is that online learning is convenient and flexible. So based on survey and observation, online learning is found to be more convenient and quality of life improvement, as there is no need to attend physical classes and will save money due to the lack of commuting. And the rebuttal for this is the lack of internet facilities or other types of facilities. Not all are blessed with facilities and devices capable of delivering effective online learning. While it is agreed that online learning has the potential to make life easier as students, the unfortunate fact remains that there are still underprivileged folks that are struggling to cope with online learning and are being left behind. So in conclusion, while there are many reasons why online learning is a good way of delivering education, there are still some major issues in regards to using online learning as the main mode of delivering education. The lack of facilities, skills, and awareness needs to be improved before this can happen. These factors that are lacking contribute to the mental health of students and faculty alike. It is important to think of these problems as there are recent incidents of suicide and mental health related death among students. This issue has to be tackled before it becomes the norm. Online learning is the way of the future, and there is little to doubt that. Would we let these problems become rampant in our kids in the future before we start to seriously tackle this issue? That's all. Thank you.
That's all our presentation from Group 1. Thank you.